Hello everyone. So in previous videos I would have went through how you can use the tools within the Power Platform individually. So Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps and Power Virtual Agents. Just some demos on how businesses can use them to gain digitalization, automation and essentially improve efficiency. But one of the beauties about the Power Platform and why I would pick Power BI over Tableau, for example, which is another business intelligence tool, is how seamlessly the tools collaborate with each other. So what I wanted to do today was show an example of that and show a flow that I have created in Power Automate, which pulls a visual from Power BI. So I'll jump over to Power BI firstly and show the visual. So it's actually not this visual. I created a separate video where I went through how I created this financial statement visual for a credit union, and I'll drop the link for that video in the description below. But if we go to the KPI tab, which is a very sad looking dashboard at the minute, it's very empty, but for the purpose of the video I just wanted to create a simple table or matrix with one of the KPIs. So what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to send basically a snapshot of this visual on either a monthly or a weekly occurrence, depending on essentially how frequently you want to send this to, whether it be the CEO of, for example, in this instance, the credit union or the board. But some examples of where this flow would be extremely useful is you can also use it to send data to external parties. So any companies that you need to send, for example, compliance reporting with banks, you could set up your Power BI report to include certain tables, certain visuals that you need to send to banks to make sure you're adhering to the covenants. That was actually something that I had to do in a previous role, and it was a very manual process, getting the data ready, cleaning it, making sure it was all correct. If your Power BI report is set up correctly and then the data is flowing through correctly, essentially all you would need to do is set up this flow in the first instance, and then it would regularly send it depending on how often you need to send the data to the bank. Some other examples would be investors. Obviously investors would be looking at some financial data or some KPIs, so it's great to be able to automate sending data to them. Other example maybe would be supply chain. So you could actually create a data-driven alert within Power BI, which would send an email only if, for example, inventory was at a pretty low level. You would set that threshold within the flow, and then you could send an email with certain data to suppliers, and also you could even also include in the email that you want to order more stock, for example. Another example would be maybe project management. So if you're collaborating with other organizations on a project and there is whatever a weekly or a monthly update, you could send them certain KPIs of the project, or you could build certain visuals containing information about how the project's going, and you could then obviously automate sending that. And where all of those examples are extremely useful is not everyone has access to Power BI and not everyone knows how to use Power BI, and that's always going to be the case. There are some people that just won't need to use it for their specific roles. So if that is the case, it's great to be able to just export this view into an email and send it to them on a recurring instance. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to Power Automate and we're going to look at the flow. So this is the flow. There's 5 steps. There's probably another video in going through how to set up this flow. It doesn't take that long, but there is a couple of steps that you need to do to format the table so it looks like an actual table, and I'll show what I mean by that in a second. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just run this flow just so you can see the email drop into my I've sent this, so I've set up a manual flow. Obviously whenever I am implementing these kind of flows for clients, again, it would be a recurring flow, whether it be weekly, daily, even. To be honest, you can even do it hourly. Obviously, in this instance, you wouldn't be creating an hourly flow. But for this one, it would more than likely be a monthly one. So we're going to click test here and run the flow, and then the email will instantly drop into my inbox. So you can see here it ran successfully. You can see here the email dropped into my inbox, and essentially you can see that the table is formatted as I wanted. There's a little bit of steps to get that table formatted like this. Again, I'll show an email now in a second of how it looks before those steps are created. But you can see straight away that if I go back to the Power BI visual, it's essentially identical to that. And again, really useful if there are certain individuals that don't have Power BI, or for example, if you are collaborating internally and maybe the CEO or the leadership team, maybe they're away on leave, but they do want to be in the loop on monthly KPIs. Maybe they just don't want to have to go into Power BI. This is a good example of where you can just send a quick sign-ups of what's going on, how the KPIs are looking for a specific month, and you can actually also include a link to the Power BI report. So if I click in here, that would then take the user of the email, if they have access of course, to the Power BI report. So what I'll do lastly is I'll just go to my emails and show you how it looked before those steps are created. So before formatting the table, it drops in like this, and obviously this isn't the prettiest table. So again, I probably will create a separate video to go through how I turn this table into the one previously.